Lucas Hale thought he'd buried the hardest chapter of his life. A widowed single father running a failing farm, raising a 6-year-old daughter alone. He'd made peace with silence, with empty chairs at dinner, with a future that looked exactly like today. But on a frozen October afternoon, everything changed. A woman appeared at his gate, bruised, trembling, with nowhere left to run. Her name was Mia Collins, and she was running from a lie that had destroyed her life. What Lucas didn't know was that letting her in would ignite a war he never asked for, and force him to choose between safety and something worth fighting for. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The wind that October carried a kind of cold that had nothing to do with temperature. It was the sort of cold that settled in the bones, in the quiet spaces of a man's life where hope used to live. Lucas Hale felt it every morning when he woke to an empty bed, every evening when he set 2 plates on the table instead of 3, every night when he stood on the porch and looked out at fields that seemed to stretch into a future as barren as his past. He was 34 years old, too young to feel this old. The farm had been in his family for 3 generations, a modest spread of land carved out of the Indiana plains where the horizon never seemed to end and the sky pressed down like a weight. It wasn't much. 100 acres of corn and soybeans, a weathered farmhouse with good bones and tired paint, a barn that leaned slightly to the east as if it, too, had grown weary of standing upright. But it was his, and more importantly, it was hers, his daughter's. 6-year-old Emma, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's stubborn chin, was the only reason Lucas got out of bed most mornings. Sarah had been gone for 3 years. Cancer, quick and merciless, had taken her before Emma's 4th birthday. Lucas didn't talk about it anymore. Didn't see the point. Grief was a private country, and he'd learned to live there quietly, moving through his days with the mechanical efficiency of a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to want something more than survival. He'd become good at routines. Wake at 5. Coffee, black. Wake Emma at 6:30. Breakfast, usually oatmeal, sometimes eggs if he remembered to buy them in town. Drop her at school by 8. Work the fields until 3. Pick her up. Homework, dinner, bath, bedtime stories. Then the long, hollow hours until he could justify sleep. The farm demanded his body. Emma demanded his heart. There was nothing left for anything else. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. Lucas remembered that detail later, found it strange how catastrophe could arrive on such an unremarkable day. Tuesday. The sky was that particular shade of gray that promised rain but never delivered, the kind of sky that matched his mood most days. He'd spent the morning fixing fence line on the North 40, the kind of mindless work that let him think about nothing, which was exactly what he wanted. Emma had drama club after school that day, which meant he had an extra hour before pickup. He'd planned to use it checking the irrigation system, but when he got back to the house just after 2, he saw her. At first, she was just a shape at the end of his driveway, a dark figure against the pale gravel. Lucas squinted, one hand shading his eyes against the flat October light. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles east. The road that ran past his property saw maybe a dozen cars a day, and most of those belonged to people he knew by name. Strangers didn't just appear out here. There was nowhere to appear from. He stood on the porch for a long moment, watching. The figure didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there, swaying slightly, like a tree in wind. Something tightened in Lucas's chest. Not quite fear, not quite curiosity. Something older, more instinctive. The feeling a man gets when he knows, on some level below thought, that his life is about to change. He walked down the drive slowly, boots crunching on gravel. As he got closer, details emerged. A woman, slender, maybe late 20s, dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, jeans and a thin jacket that wasn't nearly warm enough for the weather. She had a backpack, one of those cheap canvas ones they sold at discount stores, hanging from one shoulder. And she was hurt. Lucas could see it in the way she held herself, one arm wrapped around her ribs, her weight shifted onto her right leg. Could see it in her face as he got close enough to make out features. A purple bruise along her left cheekbone, a split in her lower lip, and something worse in her eyes. Not just pain, defeat, the kind of exhaustion that went deeper than lack of sleep. He stopped about 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to run if he needed to. Old habits died hard, and Lucas had learned a long time ago that the world wasn't always kind to people who trusted too easily. "You lost?" His voice came out rougher than he'd intended. He didn't talk much these days. Wasn't used to the sound of it anymore. The woman looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were dark brown, almost black in the flat light, and there was something searching in her gaze, like she was trying to decide whether he was real or just another cruel trick from a world that had stopped being kind. "No," she said finally. Her voice was quiet but steady. Midwestern accent, probably local. "I'm exactly where I meant to be. Lucas waited. He was good at waiting, good at silence. "My name is Mia Collins." She paused, swallowed hard. "I worked at the diner in town, Patterson's, or I did, until 3 weeks ago." Patterson's. Lucas knew it. Old brick building on Main Street, been there since the 50s. He'd taken Emma there for pancakes a few times, though not recently. Couldn't afford to eat out much anymore. "And you're at my farm because I have nowhere else to go." The words came out flat, factual, like she was stating the weather. But underneath, Lucas heard something else. Not desperation exactly, something quieter, resignation maybe. The sound of someone who'd run out of options and was simply reporting the truth. He studied her face. The bruises were fresh, maybe a day or two old. The split lip was still healing. She'd been hit, and recently. His jaw tightened. "Who did that to you?" He nodded toward her face. Mia's hand moved involuntarily to her cheek, then dropped. "Does it matter?" "Yeah, it does." She looked past him, at the farmhouse, at the fields beyond. "If I tell you, you'll send me away. Everyone else did." "Try me." For a long moment, she didn't speak. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of turned earth and coming rain. Lucas could hear the distant sound of crows in the east field, the creak of the barn's loose door. All the familiar sounds of his small, predictable world. Then Mia Collins looked him straight in the eye and said, "Ryan Mercer." The name hit Lucas like a fist to the gut. Everyone in Millbrook County knew the Mercers. Old money, or as close to old money as you got in rural Indiana. Ryan's grandfather had owned half the commercial real estate in town. The hardware store, the feed supply, Patterson's diner, a dozen rental properties. When he died, it all went to Ryan's father, Thomas, who'd expanded the empire into farming equipment and grain storage. Now Ryan was being groomed to take over, a 29-year-old golden boy with a law degree from Notre Dame and enough charm to run for office someday. Lucas had met him exactly twice. Both times had been enough. "He hit you?" Lucas's voice dropped lower, harder. "No." Mia shook her head quickly. "He never touched me. Not like that." "Then who?" "His friends. After I—" She stopped, closed her eyes. "After I said no." Lucas felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Said no to what?" "He offered me a ride home one night after my shift. It was late, raining. I was stupid enough to say yes." Her voice stayed steady, but her hands were shaking now. "He drove past my street. When I asked him to stop, he said he just wanted to talk somewhere quiet. I told him to take me home. He got angry, started saying things. I got scared. When he pulled over, I ran. And he told everyone I stole money from the diner's register, $500. Said he saw me do it, that he confronted me, and that's why I ran." She laughed, a bitter sound. His word against mine. Guess which one people believed. Lucas didn't need to guess. He'd lived in small towns his whole life, knew how they worked, knew that people like the Mercers wrote the story, and people like Mia just lived in it. "You get fired?" That same night, Jerry Patterson believed Ryan without even asking me about it, said he had to let me go, couldn't risk keeping someone dishonest on staff. She paused. "Then my landlord, who rents from Ryan's father, gave me 3 days to clear out of my apartment. I tried to find another job. Every place in town I applied. Nobody would hire me. Word spreads fast here." "Family?" "Parents died in a car accident when I was 19. No siblings. I've been on my own since then." "Friends?" Another bitter laugh. "Turns out those evaporate pretty quick when you're accused of theft. People stopped answering my calls, stopped returning texts. I became invisible. She looked down at her worn sneakers. 3 days ago, I ran out of money, been sleeping in my car. Yesterday, someone slashed my tires while I was in the library trying to use the Wi-Fi to find jobs in other towns. This morning, I found a note on the windshield. It said, "Leave while you still can." Lucas felt anger rising in his chest, hot and righteous. He'd spent 3 years feeling nothing much at all, and now here it was, fury at the casual cruelty of people who had everything and still needed to destroy someone who had nothing. "So you walked here. I remembered you." Mia met his eyes. "You came into Patterson's sometimes, with your daughter. You always left good tips, always said please and thank you. You look like—" She trailed off. "Like what?" "Like someone who might not slam a door in my face." The wind gusted harder. Lucas could smell rain now, close and certain. In an hour, maybe less, the sky would open up. This woman, Mia Collins, who'd worked at Patterson's diner and left good tips and had no family and nowhere to go, would be soaked to the skin if he sent her away. And more than that, she'd be broken. He could see it in her eyes. This was her last try, her last hope. If he said no, she'd walk back down his driveway and disappear into whatever came next. And something in those dark eyes would die. Sarah would have let her in without hesitation. Sarah, who'd never met a stray she didn't feed, a stranger she didn't trust. Sarah, who'd believed the world was fundamentally good and people were fundamentally kind, right up until the cancer proved her wrong about at least one thing. Lucas wasn't Sarah. He'd buried that kind of faith with her. But he also had a daughter, a little girl who watched everything he did, who was learning from him how to be a person in this world. What would Emma learn if he turned this woman away? That kindness had limits? That safety mattered more than decency? That when someone showed up desperate and hurt, you closed the door and pretended you'd never seen them? He thought about that for exactly 3 seconds. Then he said, "You know anything about farm work?" Mia blinked. "What?" "Farm work. Feeding chickens, gathering eggs, basic maintenance. You know how to do any of that?" I can learn." "Good. Because I don't run a charity here. You want to stay, you work. Fair pay, but you earn it." He nodded toward the house. "Room's small, shared bathroom, meals included. Rules are simple. Pull your weight, don't touch anything in my daughter's room, and don't make me regret this." For the first time since she'd appeared at the end of his driveway, something changed in Mia's face. Not quite hope, too fragile for that, but something close. A crack in the defeat. "You're serious?" "I don't joke much." Lucas turned back toward the house. "You coming or not? Rain's about to start." She followed. He could hear her footsteps on the gravel behind him, quick and uncertain, like she expected him to change his mind any second. Inside, the house was exactly what it had been that morning. Clean but spare, functional but not warm. Lucas had never been good at making spaces feel like home. That had been Sarah's gift. After she died, he'd kept everything clean and organized, but the warmth had leaked out slowly, until what remained was just a structure where people ate and slept. "This way." He led her down the narrow hallway to the room at the back of the house. It had been Sarah's sewing room once, then briefly a nursery when they thought Emma might have a sibling. Now it was just storage, boxes of old clothes, broken furniture he kept meaning to fix. "I'll clear this out tonight," Lucas said. "For now, you can put your stuff down. Bathroom's across the hall. Towels are in the closet." Mia stood in the doorway looking at the dusty space like it was the Ritz-Carlton. "I can clear it out myself. You don't have to—" "I said I'll do it." His voice came out sharper than he meant. He softened it. "You look like you could use some rest. When's the last time you ate?" She didn't answer immediately. That told him everything. "Right, come on." In the kitchen, Lucas pulled out bread, peanut butter, jelly, made 2 sandwiches quickly, efficiently, set them on a plate with an apple and a glass of milk, put it on the table. "Eat." Mia sat down slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed, picked up the sandwich, took a small bite, then another, faster. Then she was eating like someone who'd forgotten what food tasted like, and Lucas had to look away because there was something too raw about watching it. He busied himself making coffee. The machine gurgled and hissed. Outside, the first drops of rain started hitting the windows. Thank you. Mia's voice was thick. I can't. Don't. Lucas poured coffee into 2 mugs, pushed one across the table to her. You don't owe me anything except honest work. That's the deal. She nodded, wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her hand. Lucas checked the clock. 2:45. He had to leave for Emma's school in 15 minutes. I have to pick up my daughter at 3:30. You'll be okay here alone? Yes? Don't answer the door if anyone comes. Don't answer the phone. Just stay quiet. Something flickered in her eyes. You think, Ryan, I think people talk in small towns, and I think the Mercers have long arms. He met her gaze. I'm willing to help you, but I won't lie. This could get complicated. If you want to leave before that happens, I'll understand. Mia looked down at her half-eaten sandwich. I have nowhere to leave to. Right. Lucas grabbed his truck keys from the counter. I'll be back in an hour. Make yourself at home. Or as close to home as this place gets. He was almost to the door when she spoke again. Mr. Hale? He turned. Lucas. Lucas. She said it carefully, like she was testing how it felt. Why are you doing this? He thought about that. Thought about Sarah. Thought about Emma. Thought about the man he used to be before grief had hollowed him out, and the man he was trying to teach his daughter to recognize. Because someone has to, he said finally. Might as well be me. The rain was coming down harder now, turning the driveway to mud. Lucas drove carefully toward town, windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm, and tried to ignore the feeling that he'd just invited something into his life that he couldn't control. Emma was waiting under the school's front awning when he pulled up, her pink backpack almost as big as she was. She climbed into the truck with the boundless energy of a 6-year-old whose day had been full of important discoveries. Daddy, guess what? We learned about butterflies today, and Miss Peterson said I could bring in pictures from home, and I want to bring the ones Mommy took, the ones in the album. Can I? And also, Jaden said his dog had puppies, and maybe we could get one. Could we? I'd take care of it. I promise. I'd feed it and walk it and everything. Slow down, Peanut. Lucas couldn't help smiling. This was his favorite part of the day. These 15 minutes when Emma filled the truck with her voice and her presence and pushed back all the silence that lived in the rest of his life. One thing at a time, she chattered all the way home about butterflies and puppies and something complicated involving her friend Madison and the playground swings. Lucas listened, made appropriate sounds of interest, and tried to figure out how to explain to his daughter that a stranger was now living in their house. He needn't have worried. They walked in through the kitchen door, and Mia was there, standing at the sink washing dishes. She'd cleaned up, hair down, face washed, changed into what looked like her only other set of clothes. She turned when she heard them, and Lucas saw her freeze, saw the uncertainty cross her face. Emma stopped dead in her tracks. Who's that? Emma, this is Mia. She's going to be staying with us for a while, helping out around the farm. His daughter studied Mia with the frank, unfiltered curiosity of childhood. Why? Because she needs a place to stay, and we have a spare room. Oh. Emma considered this. Then, did you fall down? Mia's hand went to her bruised cheek. Something like that. My daddy says we have to be careful on the farm. Lots of things to trip over. Emma walked closer, peering up at Mia. Does it hurt? A little. When I fall down, Daddy gives me ice cream. Do you want ice cream? For the first time, Lucas saw Mia smile, a small, genuine thing that changed her whole face. Maybe later. Okay. Emma dropped her backpack on the floor. I'm Emma. I'm 6 3/4. I like butterflies and drawing and my daddy. What do you like? Mia glanced at Lucas, something like panic in her eyes, like she'd forgotten how to answer simple questions. He gave her a small nod. It's okay. I like baking, Mia said slowly, and reading, and I used to like watching the sunrise. Used to? Why'd you stop? Emma, Lucas said gently. How about you take your backpack to your room and start on homework? Can Mia help me? Mia's probably tired. I don't mind, Mia said quietly. If that's okay. Lucas looked between them, his daughter, who hadn't had another woman in her life since Sarah died, and this stranger who'd appeared at his gate like an answer to a question he didn't know he'd been asking. "Homework first," he said. Then you can show her your butterfly pictures." Emma cheered and grabbed Mia's hand, dragging her toward the living room. Mia let herself be pulled, looking back at Lucas with an expression he couldn't quite read. He stood alone in the kitchen, listening to Emma's chatter echo through the house, and realized that for the first time in 3 years, the silence was broken. Outside, the rain fell steady and cold. Inside, something new was beginning. Lucas didn't know if it would save them or destroy them. He just knew there was no going back. The first week passed in a strange, careful dance of boundaries and silence. Mia moved through the house like a ghost, present but not intrusive, helpful but never presuming. She woke before Lucas, had coffee ready when he came downstairs at 5. She worked without being asked, cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning, organizing shelves that had been chaotic for years, mending clothes Emma had outgrown, but Lucas couldn't bring himself to throw away because Sarah had bought them. She never sat down unless invited, never took food without asking, never turned on the television or touched the books on the shelves or did anything that might suggest she considered this place even temporarily hers. It bothered Lucas more than he wanted to admit. On the 4th morning, he found her scrubbing the kitchen floor on her hands and knees at 6 in the morning. Emma wouldn't be awake for another hour. The floor had been cleaned 2 days ago. "What are you doing?" His voice came out rougher than he meant. He'd slept poorly, dreams full of Sarah and rain and doors that wouldn't close. Mia looked up, startled. "I thought the grout was dirty. I wanted to—" "It's fine. The floor is fine." Lucas poured coffee with more force than necessary. "You don't have to do this." "Do what?" "Act like you're one mistake away from being thrown out." She sat back on her heels, the scrub brush still in her hand. Her knuckles were red from the hot water. "Aren't I?" The question hung in the air between them. Lucas turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "I told you the deal. You work, you stay. You've been working, so you stay." He paused. "But I meant farm work, Mia. Feeding the chickens, collecting eggs, helping with the harvest. Not this. Not pretending you don't exist." "I don't know how to do farm work." Her voice was small. "I'm trying to be useful however I can." "Then let me teach you the farm work. That's what I offered." She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "Okay." "Okay." Lucas set down his mug. "Finish your coffee, then meet me outside. Dress warm. It's cold in the mornings now." 20 minutes later, they stood in the chicken coop, a ramshackle structure Lucas's father had built 30 years ago and Lucas kept meaning to replace. 15 hens clucked and scratched in the straw, indifferent to the humans invading their space. "They're simple," Lucas said, scattering feed from a bucket. "Feed them twice a day, morning and evening. Fresh water daily. Collect the eggs, they'll usually lay in those boxes there. Watch for the rooster, he's territorial." As if on cue, a massive red rooster appeared from behind a nesting box, fixing them with a beady, aggressive stare. "That's Hank," Lucas said. "He's an asshole." Mia laughed, the first real laugh he'd heard from her. It transformed her face completely, erasing the wariness and exhaustion, revealing the woman she might have been before Ryan Mercer decided to destroy her life. "You named your aggressive rooster Hank?" Emma named him, after a character in some book. Lucas handed her the feed bucket. "Your turn." She took it hesitantly, stepped forward. Hank immediately rushed at her, wings spread, making a sound like a broken motorcycle. Mia yelped and jumped back, colliding with Lucas. He steadied her automatically, hands on her shoulders. "Sorry," she said quickly, stepping away. "I'm not good with—" "He's testing you. Show him you're not scared." "But I am scared. He's terrifying." "Fake it." Lucas picked up a long stick leaning against the wall, handed it to her. "He comes at you, use this. Just enough to let him know you're serious." Mia took the stick, looking at it like it was a sword being handed to her before battle. Lucas found himself suppressing a smile. She tried again. This time when Hank charged, she held her ground, stick extended. The rooster stopped a foot away, reassessing. Mia quickly scattered the feed, then retreated to safety. "I did it!" She sounded absurdly proud of herself. You did. Lucas took the bucket back. Now eggs. Come on. He showed her how to check the nesting boxes, how to cradle the eggs so they wouldn't crack, how to move slowly around the hens so they wouldn't startle. Mia was a quick learner, careful and methodical. Her hands were gentle with the eggs. My mother used to have chickens, she said softly, placing eggs in the basket. Before the accident, I'd forgotten that. Lucas didn't push. If she wanted to talk, she would. She'd let me collect the eggs every morning before school. I thought I was so important, so grown up. Mia smiled at the memory. I was 7. Thought I was running the whole farm. What happened to it? The farm? Wasn't really a farm, just a house with some chickens and a garden. After they died, it went to the bank. I was 19 working 2 jobs to pay for community college. Couldn't afford to keep it. She shrugged like it didn't matter, but Lucas heard what she didn't say. All those years alone. All those years with no one. They worked in comfortable silence after that. Lucas showed her how to check the water troughs, how to look for signs of illness in the hens, how to lock the coop properly so foxes couldn't get in at night. The morning sun climbed higher, burning off the frost that silvered the grass. Thank you, Mia said as they walked back to the house. For teaching me. For not making me feel stupid. Why would I make you feel stupid? Most people do. She said it matter-of-factly. When you're poor, when you work service jobs, people assume you're stupid, or lazy, or both. Lucas thought about that. Thought about all the farmers he knew who worked 16-hour days and still barely scraped by, who understood weather patterns and soil chemistry and crop rotation, but were dismissed by people who'd never grown a single thing. Thought about Sarah, who'd been a nurse, who'd known more about human anatomy than most doctors, but got talked down to by men who couldn't find their own pulse. People are idiots, he said finally. Mia laughed again. Yeah, they really are. Inside, Emma was awake, sitting at the kitchen table in her pajamas, coloring. She looked up when they came in. Daddy, Mia, I made you pictures. She held up a drawing of what might have been chickens, or possibly deformed clouds. See? That's you and Mia and Hank. It's beautiful, Peanut. Lucas kissed the top of her head. Now go get dressed. School in an hour. Can Mia make breakfast? Emma looked at Mia hopefully. She makes really good pancakes. Better than yours, Daddy. No offense. None taken. Lucas glanced at Mia. You don't have to. I want to. Mia was already moving toward the stove. If that's okay? It became their routine. Mornings with the chickens, Mia learning the rhythms of the farm, while Lucas worked the fields. Afternoons when Emma came home, the house filling with a 6-year-old's chaos and joy. Evenings after Emma went to bed, Lucas and Mia sitting at the kitchen table with coffee, talking about small things. The weather, the farm, books they'd read. Nothing too deep, nothing too personal. Just 2 people learning to exist in the same space. But small towns don't keep secrets, and kindness is sometimes the most dangerous thing you can offer. On the 9th day, Lucas drove into Millbrook to pick up feed from Patterson's grain supply. The store was owned by Jerry Patterson, same man who ran the diner, and it was always busy on Saturday mornings. Lucas usually tried to avoid it, didn't like crowds, but he'd put off the trip long enough that he was running low on chicken feed and the supplement mix he used for the soil. He was loading bags into his truck bed when he heard the voice. Lucas Hale! Didn't expect to see you in town. He turned. Ryan Mercer stood 5 feet away, leaning against a gleaming black pickup that probably cost more than Lucas's entire harvest would bring in. He looked exactly like what he was, a rich man's son playing at being rural, wearing expensive boots that had never seen real mud, and a jacket that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Ryan, Lucas kept his voice neutral, went back to loading feed. Heard an interesting story the other day. Ryan didn't move, just watched him work. Heard you took in Mia Collins, the thief. That true? Lucas's hand stilled on the bag he was lifting. Carefully, he set it down in the truck bed, then turned to face Ryan fully. She's helping out on the farm, that's all. Helping out. Ryan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's generous of you, real Christian charity. Though I have to wonder if you know what you're getting into. I know enough. Do you? Ryan pushed off from his truck, took a few steps closer. Did she tell you she stole $500 from my family's diner? Did she tell you she's got a history of this kind of thing? She told me what happened. Lucas kept his voice level. Told me her version anyway. Seems different from yours. Something flickered in Ryan's expression. Annoyance, maybe, that Lucas wasn't immediately falling in line. Her version. Right, and you believe her? A woman with no job, no family, no references? Over me. I believe what I see, and what I see is a woman who works harder than anyone I've ever met, who's grateful for basic kindness, and who's got bruises that didn't come from falling down. Lucas paused. Those bruises wouldn't happen to be from friends of yours, would they? Ryan's smile disappeared entirely. Careful, Lucas. You're making accusations you can't back up. Just asking questions, same as you. They stared at each other for a long moment. Around them, the parking lot continued its Saturday morning bustle, trucks coming and going, people loading supplies, the ordinary commerce of rural life. But in this small bubble, something dangerous was brewing. I'm going to give you some free advice, Ryan said finally, his voice dropping lower. Man to man. Send her away. Whatever sob story she told you, whatever you think you're doing, it's not worth it. The Collinses have always been trash, and Mia's no different. She'll take whatever she can from you and disappear. And when she does, you'll have burned bridges with people who actually matter in this town. You done? Lucas asked quietly. For now. Ryan stepped back. But Lucas, think about your daughter. Think about what kind of example you're setting, bringing a known thief into her life. Think about what people will say, what they already are saying. He walked away before Lucas could respond, climbed into his expensive truck, and drove off with unnecessary speed, gravel spraying from his tires. Lucas stood there for a moment, hands clenched, trying to remember the breathing exercises Sarah had taught him when his temper got away from him. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. After the third cycle, he could feel his hands unclenching. Don't let him get to you. Lucas turned. Margaret Lewis stood there, loading bags of fertilizer into her own truck. She was in her 70s, still ran her farm alone after her husband passed. Tough as nails, sharp as broken glass. I'm fine, Lucas said. No, you're not. You're angry. You've got every right to be. Margaret hefted another bag with the ease of someone who'd been doing hard labor for 5 decades. Ryan Mercer's a spoiled child who's never been told no in his entire life. And like all spoiled children, he throws tantrums when things don't go his way. You know about Mia. I know what people are saying. I also know Ryan. Margaret paused, looked at Lucas directly. I was friends with his grandmother. Good woman. She'd be ashamed of what he's become. That boy has hurt people before, Lucas. Girls who worked for his family. It's always the same story. He makes advances, they refuse. Suddenly they're fired for theft or misconduct or some other convenient lie. Lucas felt something cold settle in his stomach. How many? That I know of for certain, 3, but I suspect there are more. Margaret loaded the last bag. No one ever does anything about it because the Mercers own half this town and influence the other half. Police chief plays golf with Thomas Mercer every Sunday. Mayor owes the Mercers for campaign contributions. The few people who've tried to speak up found themselves suddenly facing problems. Loans called in, leases terminated, jobs disappeared. So everyone just lets it happen. Not everyone, but enough people to make the rest of us feel powerless. She closed her tailgate with a decisive thunk. I'm telling you this so you know what you're up against. If you're going to help that girl, you need to understand. It won't be easy, and it won't be safe. Lucas looked at this woman who'd known him since he was Emma's age, who'd brought casseroles after Sarah died, who'd never once asked for anything in return. You think I should send her away? Margaret laughed, sharp and bitter. I think if everyone who could help sends people away, then monsters like Ryan Mercer win. I think your wife would have let Mia stay without a second thought, and I think you already know what you're going to do. She was right. He did. Lucas finished loading his truck, drove home in silence, and found Mia in the garden pulling the last of the winter vegetables. Emma sat nearby, making a crown out of dried corn husks and chattering about something that had happened at school. Mia looked up when she heard the truck, and something in Lucas's expression must have shown because she stood immediately, brushing dirt from her knees. What happened? Emma, sensing the shift in mood, looked between them. Daddy? Everything's fine, Peanut. Keep working on your crown. Mia, can I talk to you? Inside? They left Emma in the garden and walked into the kitchen. Lucas closed the door, then told her about the encounter with Ryan. Watched her face go pale. Watched her hands start to shake. I'll leave, she said immediately. Tonight. I'll pack and go. I won't bring trouble to your door. Stop. Lucas said it more sharply than he intended. Just stop. But he's right. People are talking. You're putting yourself at risk. Mia. He waited until she looked at him. I knew this could happen. Knew it from the moment you told me who hurt you. I made the choice anyway. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you do that? Lucas thought about how to answer. Thought about Sarah, who would have known exactly what to say. Thought about Emma, who deserved to grow up seeing her father stand up for what was right, even when it was hard. Thought about the man he'd been before grief hollowed him out, and the man he was trying to remember how to be. Because I'm tired of watching good people get destroyed by bad ones, he said finally. Because Emma's watching everything I do, learning what kind of world this is by how I act in it, and because, he paused, because you matter. You might not think you do. The Mercers might not think you do, but you matter, and I'm not sending you away. Mia's eyes filled with tears. She turned away quickly, but not before Lucas saw her shoulders shake. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. No one's ever... I've been alone so long I forgot what it felt like to have someone... You're not alone anymore. Lucas said it with more certainty than he felt. Whatever happens, we'll handle it. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Okay. A pause, then quieter. Thank you. Stop thanking me. We're past that. The next 2 weeks brought the first real cold of the year. November frost silvered the fields every morning, and Lucas had to break ice on the water troughs before the animals could drink. The work was hard and constant, but Mia matched him hour for hour, learning quickly, never complaining. She fixed the broken latch on the barn door, organized the chaos of the tool shed, helped him winterize the equipment. Emma adored her, started calling her Aunt Mia one day and never stopped. Would wait at the window after school until Lucas's truck appeared, then run to tell Mia everything that had happened. Playground drama, spelling tests, the ongoing saga of who got to be line leader. In the evenings, after Emma went to bed, Lucas and Mia would sit at the kitchen table. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. She told him about her parents, about the community college she'd attended for 2 semesters before money ran out, about dreams she'd had of being a teacher someday. He told her about Sarah, about the farm, about how some days he still heard his wife's voice in the house and didn't know if he was going crazy or just grieving. You're not crazy, Mia said softly. You loved her. That doesn't just disappear. Sometimes I feel guilty, Lucas admitted. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. That I'm starting to forget little things. The exact sound of her laugh, the way she took her coffee. It's only been 3 years, and already she's fading. That's not forgetting, that's healing. Mia's hands wrapped around her mug, and I think she'd want you to heal. Maybe she was right. Maybe Sarah would want him to move forward, to let the house fill with warmth again, to stop living like he was waiting for permission to be alive. Thanksgiving approached. Lucas had been dreading it, the first year Emma was old enough to really remember the holiday, to ask why it was just the 2 of them when other kids had big families gathered around tables. We could cook, Mia suggested one evening. Make it special for Emma, if you want. You don't have to. I want to. I miss cooking. The diner never let me do anything creative, just the same breakfast menu day after day. But I used to love it, trying new recipes, making things from scratch. So they planned. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans, pie. Emma vibrated with excitement, helped Mia make shopping lists, drew decorations to hang around the kitchen. The morning of Thanksgiving, Lucas woke to the smell of baking bread. He found Mia in the kitchen at 6 a.m., flour in her hair, rolling out pie dough. Couldn't sleep, she explained. Thought I'd get started. They worked side by side all morning. Lucas handled the turkey while Mia orchestrated everything else with the precision of someone who'd spent years in professional kitchens. Emma helped, by taste testing everything and offering running commentary. By 2 o'clock, the table was set with dishes Lucas hadn't used since Sarah died, food crowding every surface, the house warm and full of rich smells that made his stomach growl. They sat down together, Lucas, Emma, and Mia. An odd little family, assembled from broken pieces. "We're supposed to say what we're thankful for," Emma announced. "Miss Peterson said so. I'll go first." She didn't wait for permission. "I'm thankful for Daddy and Aunt Mia and Hank, even though he's mean and butterflies and my new crayons and one thing, Peanut," Lucas said, smiling. Emma thought hard. "Okay, I'm thankful that Aunt Mia came to live with us because now it's not so quiet." Something tightened in Lucas's chest. He hadn't realized Emma had noticed the quiet, hadn't thought about how the silence of the house must have felt to her. "Your turn, Daddy." Lucas looked around the table, at his daughter, eyes bright with joy, at Mia, who'd somehow become essential to their daily life in just 6 weeks, at the food they'd made together, the warmth they'd created. "I'm thankful for second chances," he said. Mia's turn. She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I'm thankful for kindness when I thought the world had run out of it, and for a place that feels like home." They ate until they were overfull, laughed at Emma's increasingly ridiculous jokes, helped her build a fort out of couch cushions. For a few hours, the world outside didn't exist. No Ryan Mercer, no small-town gossip, no fear about what might come next. Just this. Just them. Just enough. That night, after Emma finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Lucas found Mia on the front porch. She'd wrapped herself in one of Sarah's old quilts, was staring out at the dark fields. "You okay?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "More than okay." She pulled the quilt tighter. I haven't had a day like that since before my parents died. I'd forgotten what it felt like." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. "Lucas?" Mia's voice was hesitant. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you really let me stay? The real reason." He considered lying, considered giving her the easy answer about needing help on the farm, about doing the right thing. But they were past easy answers now. "Because I was drowning," he said finally. "After Sarah died, I put everything I had into keeping the farm running and raising Emma. But there was nothing left for me. I was just going through motions, existing but not living." He paused. "And then you showed up, and suddenly there was someone to talk to at the end of the day. Someone who saw me as more than just Emma's dad or Sarah's widower. Someone who needed me to be strong, which made me want to be strong again. So I was helping you too." "Yeah, you were." He looked at her. "You still are." Mia pulled the quilt tighter around her shoulders. The cold bit at their faces, but neither moved to go inside. "I think I'm falling in love with this life," she said quietly. "This farm, this routine. Emma, I know I shouldn't. I know it's temporary, but I can't help it." Lucas felt his heart kick hard against his ribs. What if it wasn't temporary? She turned to look at him. "What? What if you stayed? Not as help, not as someone passing through, just stayed." "Lucas, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. He struggled to find the words. "This works. Us. Here. And I don't want it to end." Mia's eyes were bright in the darkness. "What about Ryan? What about the town? What about—" "I don't care." And saying it, Lucas realized it was true. Let them talk. Let them judge. I've spent 3 years caring too much about what other people think, trying to be the perfect widower, the perfect father. I'm tired of it. I want to choose something for myself. And I choose this. I choose you staying. For a long moment she didn't respond. Then slowly she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cold, but they held on tight. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They sat there until the cold drove them inside, hands linked, and neither one mentioned that choosing happiness might mean choosing war. But in that moment, on that porch, in the quiet dark of a November night, it didn't matter. They had each other. They had Emma. They had this farm, and this life, and this fragile, precious thing they were building together. And for now, that was enough. December came with snow that turned the farm into something from a postcard. Emma squealed with delight the first morning she woke to find the world transformed, pressed her face against the window glass, and begged to go outside before breakfast. Mia bundled her up in layers while Lucas shoveled the drive, and together they built a snowman that leaned slightly to the left, its carrot nose already being investigated by curious crows. Life had settled into something Lucas hadn't dared hope for. The work was still hard, the days still long, but the house felt different now. Alive. Emma's laughter rang through rooms that had been too quiet for too long. Mia sang while she cooked, old songs Lucas half remembered from his childhood. And sometimes, late at night when Emma was asleep, he and Mia would sit close on the couch, her head on his shoulder, neither needing to fill the silence with words. They hadn't talked again about what Lucas had said on the porch that Thanksgiving night, hadn't defined what they were becoming to each other. It felt safer that way, like naming it might shatter the fragile peace they'd built. But peace, Lucas was learning, was a luxury people like them couldn't afford for long. The first sign came on a Tuesday. Lucas was in town picking up parts for the tractor when he ran into David Chen, who owned the hardware store. They'd known each other since grade school, had played baseball together in high school, went to each other's weddings. Lucas? David's greeting was stiff, formal, not like himself at all. David, how's business? Fine. Good. David shifted his weight, looked uncomfortable. Listen, I need to talk to you about something. Okay. The part you ordered last week, the transmission seal? David wouldn't meet his eyes. I can't sell it to you. Lucas blinked. What? Why not? I just can't. I'm sorry. David turned away, started reorganizing bolts that didn't need organizing. David, I need that part. Need that. The tractor won't run without it. Try Patterson's over in Greenfield. They might have one. That's 40 miles away. You're telling me you won't sell me a part I already ordered and paid for? David's jaw tightened. I'm telling you I can't, and you know why. Understanding hit Lucas like cold water. The Mercers got to you. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Lucas felt anger rising in his chest. What did they threaten you with? Your lease? Your suppliers? Lucas, I've got a wife and 3 kids. I can't afford to... David stopped, shook his head. I'm sorry. I really am. But I can't help you. Lucas left without another word, drove the 40 miles to Greenfield, and bought the part from a stranger who didn't care who he was or who he'd angered. But the message was clear. The Mercers were tightening the noose. Over the next 2 weeks, it got worse. The feed supplier suddenly couldn't deliver to his address anymore, some vague excuse about route changes. The bank called about his mortgage, mentioned they were reviewing all their agricultural loans, suggested he come in for a meeting. People he'd known his entire life crossed the street to avoid talking to him. At church on Sunday, the pew that had always been occupied by friendly neighbors was conspicuously empty. Lucas didn't tell Mia at first. Didn't want to give her another reason to think about leaving, another dose of guilt for a situation that wasn't her fault. But she noticed anyway. Noticed when he came home tense and quiet, noticed when bills started piling up because vendors suddenly required payment up front instead of extending the credit they'd always given him. It's happening again, she said one night after Emma was in bed. They were in the kitchen, Lucas nursing a beer he didn't really want, Mia folding laundry that didn't need folding right then. They're punishing you because of me. They're showing their true colors. That's different. Lucas, I can't watch them destroy your life the way they destroyed mine. I won't. They're not destroying anything. But even as he said it, Lucas knew it was only partly true. The Mercers couldn't take his farm outright, but they could make life difficult enough that eventually he'd have no choice but to sell. And who would buy? Probably one of Thomas Mercer's shell companies swooping in to claim another piece of the county. I should go. Mia's voice was steady, but her hands shook as they folded one of Emma's shirts. Find somewhere else, somewhere far enough away that... No. Lucas, I said no. He stood, walked to where she was standing. I'm not letting them win. Not this time. Not with you. This isn't about winning. This is about survival. Yours and Emma's. And what about yours? Lucas caught her hand, stilled their nervous movement. Where would you go, Mia? What would you do? You think the Mercers won't follow you? Won't make sure every place you land knows their version of your story? She pulled her hands away. At least you'd be safe. I don't want safe. I want you here. Emma wants you here. Emma's 6. She'll forget. Don't. Lucas's voice came out harder than he meant. Don't diminish what you mean to her. Don't act like the last 2 months haven't mattered. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Of course they've mattered. That's exactly why I can't stay. Because it matters too much. And when the Mercers take everything from you, I won't be able to live with knowing I caused it. They stood facing each other in the warm kitchen, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the only sound. Outside, snow fell in thick, silent curtains, burying the world in white. I'm falling in love with you, Lucas said. The words hung in the air between them. Mia's breath caught. You can't. You don't even know me. Not really. I'm just someone who showed up desperate, and I know you get up before dawn to make coffee, even though you hate mornings. I know you read the same page of your book 3 times when you're worried about something. I know you sing to the chickens when you think no one's listening. I know you check on Emma twice every night to make sure she's covered with her blanket. Lucas paused. I know you make this house feel like a home again. I know Emma smiles more than she has since her mother died. And I know that somewhere in the last 2 months, you stopped being a stranger and started being the best thing that's happened to us in 3 years. Mia was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. This is insane. We barely know each other. It's too fast, too... Sarah and I knew each other 3 weeks before I proposed. Everyone said we were crazy. Maybe we were. But we had 12 good years before cancer took her, and I don't regret a single day. Lucas reached up, gently wiped a tear from her cheek. I'm not saying we have to rush into anything. I'm just saying I'm not letting you go without a fight. And if the Mercers want a war, they can have one. Lucas, they'll destroy you. Maybe. Or maybe it's time someone stood up to them. He pulled her close, and after a moment's hesitation, she let him. She was warm and solid and real in his arms, and Lucas felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Dangerous, terrifying hope. We'll figure it out, together. She pressed her face against his chest. I'm scared. Me too. What if we can't win? Then at least we tried. They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the snow fell and the night deepened, and somewhere in town, Ryan Mercer probably sat in his expensive house, confident that he'd already won. The confrontation came 3 days before Christmas. Lucas had driven Emma to her friend Madison's house for a playdate, leaving Mia alone at the farm. She'd been planning to bake cookies, had flour and sugar spread across the counter, Christmas music playing on the old radio. The house felt warm and safe, decorated with paper snowflakes Emma had cut out and strings of popcorn they'd made together. She didn't hear the truck pull up, didn't hear the footsteps on the porch. The first she knew someone was there was when the kitchen door opened without a knock and Ryan Mercer walked into her sanctuary. Mia froze, hands covered in cookie dough, heart suddenly hammering against her ribs. Hello, Mia. Ryan smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. Been a while. You need to leave. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Lucas will be back soon. No, he won't. I saw him drop the kid off across town. We've got at least an hour. Ryan looked around the kitchen, taking in the Christmas decorations, the cookies, the evidence of a life being lived. You've made yourself quite comfortable here. I said leave. Now. Or what? You'll call the police? Ryan laughed. Chief Morrison plays golf with my dad every Sunday. Who do you think he'll believe? Mia edged toward the counter where the knife block sat. Ryan noticed, moved to intercept her. I'm not here to hurt you, he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. I'm here to make you an offer. I don't want anything from you. Don't be stupid. Everyone wants something. Ryan pulled out a chair, sat down like he owned the place. $5,000. Cash. You take it, you leave town, and we forget this whole unpleasant business ever happened. You're trying to buy me off. I'm trying to solve a problem. You're making my life difficult, Mia. You're making Lucas's life difficult. This way, everyone wins. Except I'd be alone again, homeless again, running again. You'd have money this time. Enough to start over somewhere new. Somewhere the Hale family's reputation won't be destroyed because of you. Ryan leaned forward. Because that's what's happening, you know. Lucas is losing business. People are talking. His daughter's getting asked questions at school about the thief living in her house. Is that what you want? To ruin a good man and his kid? The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Mia thought about Emma, innocent and trusting. Thought about Lucas, who'd given her everything when she had nothing. I've tried to be nice, Ryan continued. Tried to give you time to come to your senses. But my patience is running out. So here's what's going to happen. You take this money and disappear. Or things get worse. Much worse. Lucas's mortgage gets called in, his equipment gets vandalized. Maybe someone makes a call to child services, suggests Emma isn't being raised in a safe environment. These things happen. You're threatening a child. I'm stating facts. The world is cruel to people who don't know their place, Mia. You learned that once. Don't make Lucas and his daughter learn it too. Mia's hands were shaking. She hated that he could still do this to her, still make her feel small and powerless and worthless. Hated that everything he was saying had teeth because she'd seen it all happen before. Get out, she said, but her voice was weak. Think about my offer. You've got until New Year's. Ryan stood, straightened his expensive jacket. After that, the gloves come off. And trust me, you don't want to see what that looks like. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. You know what's funny? I actually tried to be nice to you. Offered you a ride, thought maybe we could have some fun. But you had to go and be difficult. Had to say no like you were too good for me. His voice turned cold. Nobody says no to me, Mia. Nobody. The sooner you learn that, the better for everyone. Then he was gone, leaving the door open to the cold. Mia stood frozen for a long moment before she found the strength to move, to close the door, to lock it. Her legs gave out and she slid down the wall, hugging her knees to her chest. He was right. That was the worst part. Everything he'd said was true. She was bringing destruction into Lucas's life, into Emma's life. And the longer she stayed, the worse it would get. The radio was still playing Christmas music. Silent night. Holy night. The irony wasn't lost on her. When Lucas came home an hour later, Emma chattering about her playdate, he found Mia in the kitchen. The cookie dough was still on the counter, abandoned. She'd cleaned her hands, but nothing else. Just sat at the table, staring at nothing. Mia? Lucas sent Emma to wash her hands, then crouched beside Mia's chair. What happened? She told him. Everything. Ryan's visit, his threats, his offer. Lucas's face went from concerned to furious, a muscle jumping in his jaw. That son of a... He stopped himself, remembered Emma was in the next room, took a breath. He came into our home, threatened you, threatened Emma. He's right, though. Mia's voice was hollow. I'm putting you in danger, both of you. No, he's a coward who preys on people he thinks can't fight back. Lucas stood, started pacing. We need to call the police. And tell them what? He didn't touch me, didn't explicitly threaten violence. He just made an offer and stated some facts about how the world works. Mia laughed bitterly. The police chief plays golf with his father, Lucas. Nothing will happen except Ryan will know we tried, and he'll escalate. So what, we just let him win? I don't know. Mia stood, agitation finally breaking through the numbness. I don't know what we do. I just know I can't watch him destroy you. I can't. Emma appeared in the doorway, confused by the raised voices. Why are you fighting? Both adults stopped, looked at the little girl who was watching them with worried eyes. We're not fighting, Peanut, Lucas said gently. Just talking about grown-up stuff. How about you go play in your room for a bit? But I want to make cookies with Mia. Later, okay? I promise. Emma left reluctantly, and Lucas turned back to Mia. I'm not letting him scare you away, he said quietly. We'll figure this out. How? He has all the power, Lucas, all the money, all the connections. What do we have? Each other, the truth, and people in this town who are tired of the Mercers running everything. Lucas pulled out his phone. I'm calling Margaret Lewis. If anyone knows how to fight this, it's her. Margaret arrived within the hour, her old pickup truck rumbling up the drive. She listened to everything, her weathered face growing harder with each detail. "That boy has needed a reckoning for a long time," she said when they finished. "Question is, are you prepared for what that's going to take?" "What do you mean?" Lucas asked. "I mean, going after the Mercers isn't just about telling the truth. It's about proving it. It's about finding other victims willing to speak up. It's about being prepared to lose everything before you win anything." Margaret looked at Mia. "And it's going to require you being willing to relive the worst moments of your life in front of the whole town." Mia felt sick. "I don't know if I can." "I understand. It's asking a lot." Margaret paused. "But there's someone you should talk to. Her name is Jessica Brennan. She worked for the Mercers 5 years ago. Same thing happened to her. Ryan made advances, she refused. Suddenly she was fired for stealing. She left town after, but I've kept in touch. Last I heard, she's in Indianapolis doing well, started her own business." "You think she'd talk to us?" Lucas asked. "I think she'd want to know she's not alone, that someone's finally willing to fight back." Margaret pulled out a worn address book. "I can reach out, see if she's willing to meet." They talked for another hour, making plans that felt simultaneously too aggressive and not enough. Margaret left with promises to make calls, to reach out to people who might help. Lucas made dinner while Mia sat with Emma, helping her finish the Christmas cookies they'd abandoned earlier. That night, after Emma was asleep, Lucas found Mia standing at her bedroom window, looking out at the dark fields. "You thinking about running?" he asked from the doorway. "I'm thinking about what the right thing is, and I'm not sure anymore." Lucas crossed the room, stood beside her. "The right thing is not letting fear make our decisions. Even if fear is rational? Even if staying puts Emma at risk? Emma's at risk either way. If you leave, she loses someone she loves. If you stay, we fight for what's right. I know which lesson I want to teach her." Mia turned to face him. "You could lose everything." "I already lost everything once when Sarah died. I survived. We survived." Lucas reached for her hand. "But I don't want to just survive anymore, Mia. I want to live. And I can't do that if I let people like Ryan Mercer dictate what happens in my life." "I'm so scared." "I know, me too." He pulled her close, and she came willingly, pressing her face against his shoulder. "But we're not doing this alone. Margaret's with us. Maybe Jessica will be too, and there are other people in this town who are tired of being afraid." They stood like that for a long time, drawing strength from each other. Outside, the winter wind howled around the farmhouse, but inside, they were warm. The next morning, Margaret called. Jessica Brennan had agreed to meet them. She'd drive down from Indianapolis the day after Christmas. She had things to say, and she was tired of being silent. Christmas came quietly. Lucas had bought Emma too many presents, trying to make up for all the holidays that had felt hollow since Sarah died. Mia had made a feast that filled the house with warmth and rich smells. They opened presents, played in the snow, watched old movies curled up on the couch together. For one day, they pretended the storm wasn't coming. Emma fell asleep between them on the couch that night, exhausted from excitement. Lucas carried her to bed while Mia cleaned up wrapping paper and ribbon. When he came back, Mia was standing by the Christmas tree, the colored lights reflecting in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For giving me this. Even if it doesn't last. Even if everything falls apart tomorrow. Thank you for this one perfect day." Lucas crossed to her, took her face in his hands. "It's going to last. I'm going to make sure it lasts." Then he kissed her. It wasn't their first kiss. That had happened a week earlier, quick and almost accidental, neither acknowledging it after. But this was different. This was intentional, certain, a promise being made without words. Mia kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I meant what I said before. I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I already have." "Lucas, you don't have to say it back. I just need you to know. Whatever happens with the Mercers, whatever fights we have ahead, you need to know that this is real for me. You're real for me." Mia's eyes were bright with tears. "I'm already in love with you. I think I have been since you taught me how to stand up to Hank the rooster." Lucas laughed, surprised, then kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. They stood there in the glow of the Christmas tree, holding each other while the fire crackled and the house creaked in the wind. Tomorrow, they'd meet Jessica Brennan. Tomorrow, they'd start planning their fight against the Mercers. Tomorrow, the war would truly begin. But tonight, they had this. And it was enough. Jessica Brennan arrived on a gray December morning, her sensible sedan pulling up the drive just after 9. Lucas watched from the porch as she parked, noting the way she sat in the car for a full minute before getting out, steeling herself. He understood. Coming back to this town, even for a few hours, must feel like walking back into a nightmare. She was 32, Margaret had said, though she looked older. Success hadn't erased what the Mercers had done to her. Lucas could see it in the careful way she moved, the wariness in her eyes as she approached the house. "Mr. Hale?" Her handshake was firm, professional. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." "Lucas, please, and thank you for coming. I know this can't be easy." "Nothing about the Mercers is easy." Jessica glanced toward the house. "Is Mia here?" "Inside with my daughter. We thought it might be better to talk first, just us." They settled in the living room with coffee neither of them really wanted. Jessica sat ramrod straight, hands wrapped around her mug like it was an anchor. "Margaret said you're having trouble with Ryan," she began. "Same pattern as before?" "He's trying to force Mia out of town, threatened my business, my family, made her an offer to leave." Lucas paused. "Said some things that made it clear this isn't the first time he's done this." "It's not." Jessica set down her mug. "I was 27 when I came to Millbrook. I'd just gotten my accounting degree, was thrilled when the Mercer Group offered me a position managing their rental properties. Good salary, benefits, seemed like a great opportunity. What happened? Ryan happened. Started small, comments about my appearance, finding excuses to come by my office. I ignored it, thought if I stayed professional, he'd get bored and move on." She laughed bitterly. "I was so naive. One night he showed up at my apartment, said he'd been thinking about me, wanted to take me to dinner. I said no. He pushed harder. I had to physically push him out and lock the door." Lucas felt anger coiling in his gut. "Let me guess. Next day you were fired." "Next day, Thomas Mercer himself called me into his office. Said they'd discovered discrepancies in the rental accounts, money missing. Said they had evidence I'd been embezzling." Jessica's voice stayed steady, but her hands were shaking now. "I tried to defend myself, showed them my records, everything balanced perfectly. Didn't matter. They'd created false documents, made it look like I'd been stealing for months. Gave me 2 choices, resign quietly and leave town, or they'd press charges and I'd go to prison. Jesus. I resigned. Packed up that same day, drove to Indianapolis with everything I owned in my car." Jessica looked at him directly. "I spent 2 years rebuilding my life, proving I could be trusted. Started my own bookkeeping business from nothing. And every single day, I was terrified someone would find out about Millbrook, about the accusations, and it would all come crashing down again. Did you ever think about fighting back?" "Every day. But I was alone, Lucas. No family, no money for lawyers, no proof that would stand up against the Mercers' fabricated evidence. And I was scared." She paused. "I'm still scared. Coming here today, knowing what they're capable of, it terrifies me." "Then why did you come?" Jessica was quiet for a long moment. "Because Margaret told me about Mia. Told me there's someone else Ryan targeted, someone who's willing to stand up to him. And I realized if I didn't help, if I stayed silent while he did this to another woman, I'd be as guilty as the people who let him get away with hurting me." Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. They weren't alone in this. "Would you be willing to go on record? Tell your story publicly?" "That's why I'm here. But I need you to understand what that means." Jessica leaned forward. "The Mercers will come after me again. They'll dig up every mistake I've ever made, twist every truth into a lie. They'll try to destroy my business, my reputation, everything I've built. And there's a good chance they'll succeed. What if there were more of us, more people willing to speak up?" Margaret mentioned there might be others, women Ryan targeted over the years. Jessica's expression was grim. "But getting them to talk is another matter. Most of them probably did what I did, ran away and tried to forget. Asking them to relive that trauma, to put themselves in the Mercers' crosshairs again, that's asking a lot. I know, but it might be the only way to stop him from doing this to someone else." They talked for another hour, Jessica sharing details about the Mercers' operation, how they'd covered their tracks, the people in town who'd helped them or looked the other way. By the time Mia joined them, having left Emma with a movie, Lucas had a clearer picture of what they were up against. It was worse than he'd thought. Mia and Jessica recognized each other instantly in that way survivors of the same trauma do. They didn't need extensive introductions or explanations. They sat across from each other in Lucas's living room, two women who'd never met but shared the same scars. "I'm sorry," Mia said quietly, "for what he did to you." "I'm sorry he did it to you too." Jessica's voice was kind. "How are you holding up?" "Some days better than others. Today's a hard day." "They're all hard days when you're fighting the Mercers, but at least now you're not fighting alone." They spent the next 2 hours sharing their stories, finding the patterns, the similarities that proved this was systematic rather than coincidental. Ryan's approaches were always the same: charm first, then pressure, then rage when rejected. The accusations that followed were always financial, always impossible to disprove completely. The town's response was always the same too: silence, complicity, fear. "We need more than just our stories," Jessica said finally. "We need proof, documentation, something that shows a pattern the authorities can't ignore." "The money Ryan accused me of stealing," Mia said slowly. "He said I took $500 from Patterson's diner, but I never touched the register except during my shifts, and Jerry balanced it every night. There should be records showing when the money actually went missing." "And I kept copies of all my accounting work," Jessica added. "When the Mercers accused me of embezzlement, they showed fabricated ledgers. But I have the real ones. They proved the money they claimed was missing never existed." Lucas felt hope stirring. What if we could find the actual money? The 500 Ryan said Mia stole. If it's still in his possession, or if we could prove it was never stolen in the first place, it would show he lied. Mia's eyes widened. It would prove this was retaliation, not justice. "We'd need access to Patterson's financial records," Jessica said, her accountant's mind already working. "And probably the Mercers' personal finances too, which is going to be nearly impossible." "Not if Jerry Patterson cooperates." Lucas pulled out his phone. "He and my dad were friends. I know he felt bad about firing Mia. Maybe he'd be willing to look at his books again, see if he can find proof the theft never happened." "That's asking him to go against the Mercers," Mia warned. "They own his building. They could ruin him." "Let me try. Worst he can say is no." But Jerry Patterson didn't say no. When Lucas called and explained what they needed, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Jerry's gravelly voice said, "I've been feeling sick about what I did to that girl for months now. If I can help make it right, I will. Come by the diner tomorrow morning, early, before we open." The next morning, Lucas and Mia drove into town while Emma stayed with Margaret. The diner was dark when they arrived, but Jerry was waiting, looking older than Lucas remembered. The man's hands shook slightly as he unlocked the door. "I've been going over the books," Jerry said without preamble. "Every night since I fired you, Mia, trying to figure out what I missed, where the money went." "And?" Lucas prompted. Jerry spread ledgers across a table, pointing to entries with a pen. "Here's the thing. The day Ryan said the theft happened, the register balanced perfectly. No missing money at all. I remember because I was surprised. We'd had a busy lunch rush, lot of cash transactions, and everything came out exact to the penny." Mia leaned over the books. "Then where did the $500 come from?" "That's what bothered me. So I went back further, looked at deposits." Jerry flipped pages. 3 days before Ryan made his accusation, there was a deposit that didn't match any sales. $500, cash, no explanation. At the time, I figured I'd made an error in the books, gotten lucky. But now? "Ryan planted it," Mia breathed. "Put money in the register so he could accuse me of trying to steal it." "That's my theory. And if I'm right, if I testify that the register balanced that day, that there was never any theft, it proves he lied." Lucas felt vindication rising. "Jerry, would you be willing to make a statement, go on record?" The older man was quiet for a long moment. "The Mercers own this building. My lease is up for renewal next month. They've already told me the rent's going up 30%. If I go against them, they'll kick me out, and I'll lose everything." "I understand. We're not asking you to toss." "But I'm tired. Jerry interrupted. I'm tired of being afraid of them. Tired of watching them hurt people and doing nothing. Tired of what I see in the mirror. He looked at Mia. I fired you based on a lie. Ruined your life because I was too scared to question Ryan Mercer. That's not the man I want to be. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is just one piece. The Mercers are going to fight hard, and they fight dirty. They left with copies of the ledgers, Jerry's promise to testify, and the beginnings of a case. But Lucas knew it wasn't enough. One man's word, even with financial records, wouldn't be enough to bring down the Mercers. They needed more. The answer came from an unexpected source. Margaret called that afternoon, her voice tight with excitement. I found another one. Another woman Ryan went after. Her name's Amanda Foster. She's local, works at the county clerk's office. Been here the whole time. Why didn't she come forward before? Lucas asked. Same reason the rest of us stayed quiet, fear. But she's willing to talk now, especially after I told her about Jessica and Mia. She wants to meet. Tonight, if possible. They gathered at Margaret's farmhouse after dark. Lucas, Mia, Jessica, Jerry, and Amanda Foster, a quiet woman in her late 30s with careful eyes and a nervous habit of twisting her wedding ring. Her husband sat beside her, a solid presence, his jaw tight with barely contained anger. I worked at Mercer Group 6 years ago, Amanda began, her voice soft but steady. Administrative assistant. Ryan was always inappropriate. Comments, looks, finding excuses to touch my shoulder or my hand. I was 29, newly married, and I needed the job. So I tried to ignore it. Her husband's hand found hers. She squeezed it gratefully before continuing. One night, I was working late, finishing a report. Ryan came by, said everyone else had gone home. He started talking about how hard I worked, how much he appreciated me. Then he tried to kiss me. Amanda's voice wavered. I pushed him away, told him I was married, told him to leave me alone. He got angry, said I'd been leading him on, that I owed him for all the special treatment he'd given me. What happened? Mia asked gently. I ran, got in my car, and drove home. Told my husband everything. Amanda looked at the man beside her. James wanted to go to the police to confront Ryan. I begged him not to. I was terrified of what the Mercers would do. Next day, James said, his voice rough, they fired her. Said she'd been sharing confidential company information with competitors. Threatened to sue her for breach of contract unless she signed an NDA and left quietly. Did you sign? Lucas asked. I did. I was scared, and they made it clear that if I fought them, they'd make sure I never worked in this county again. Amanda's hands were shaking now. I've kept quiet for 6 years. Watched Ryan walk around town like he owns it, knowing what he is, what he's done. And it's been eating me alive. The NDA, Jessica said carefully. If you break it by speaking publicly, they can sue you. I know, James and I have talked about it. We're prepared to face that. Amanda lifted her chin. But I work at the county clerk's office now. I have access to public records, property records, business filings, legal documents. And over the years, I've noticed things. She pulled out a folder, spread papers across Margaret's kitchen table. The Mercers are careful, but they're not perfect. Every time Ryan targets someone, there's a pattern in the property records. Women get evicted. The Mercers acquire their properties through shell companies, then flip them for profit. I started documenting it years ago, just keeping track. Amanda's finger traced over documents. Here's your apartment, Mia. Purchased by Mercer Holdings, LLC. 3 days after you were evicted. Sold 6 weeks later for double what they paid. Jessica, here's your place. Same pattern. And there are 5 more I found going back 9 years. Lucas stared at the documents. This shows they had a financial motive. They weren't just retaliating against women who rejected Ryan. They were profiting from it. Exactly. Target a woman, fabricate evidence of wrongdoing, force her out, acquire her property cheap, then sell high. It's fraud, it's harassment, and if we can prove the pattern, we can show this is criminal enterprise, not just personal vendetta, Jessica finished. Amanda, this is incredible. It's also dangerous, James said quietly. The Mercers have friends in the county administration. If they find out Amanda's been compiling this, if they realize she's about to blow the whistle, then we move fast, Lucas said. We take everything we have to someone who can't be bought or intimidated, someone with the authority to actually investigate this. Who? Mia asked. The local police won't touch it. The county prosecutor probably owes the Mercers favors. Margaret had been quiet, listening. Now she spoke up. State Attorney General, I've known Linda Morrison since she was in law school. She's straight as an arrow, hates corruption, and she doesn't owe the Mercers anything. If we can get this in front of her, she'll act on it. Can you get us a meeting? Lucas asked. I can try. Margaret pulled out her phone. But we need to be ready. Once we make this move, there's no going back. The Mercers will know we're coming for them, and they'll fight like cornered animals. They spent the next 3 hours organizing their evidence, building their case. Jerry's financial records showing no theft. Jessica's accounting ledgers proving the embezzlement accusations were fabricated. Amanda's property records showing the pattern of fraud. And 3 women willing to testify, despite the personal cost, that Ryan Mercer was a predator who'd been protected for too long. It was after midnight when they finally finished. Lucas drove Mia home through empty streets, both of them exhausted but energized. We might actually have a chance, Mia said quietly. A real chance. We do. Amanda's records change everything. I keep thinking about her husband, the way he sat there, supporting her, even though this could cost them everything. Mia looked at Lucas. That's love. Real love. Not just the good times, but standing together when things get hard. Lucas reached across the console, found her hand. That's what I want to give you. That's what I want us to be. We barely know each other, Lucas. 3 months ago, I was a stranger at your gate. And now you're the person I can't imagine my life without. He pulled into the farm's driveway, parked, but didn't let go of her hand. I know it's fast. I know we're in the middle of a war, but I also know that life is short and uncertain, and when you find something real, you hold on to it. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Sarah would have liked me, wouldn't she? The question caught Lucas off guard. Yes, she would have loved you. How do you know? Because she believed in helping people, believed in second chances, believed that everyone deserved kindness. Lucas smiled sadly. She would have let you in without a second thought, and she would have fought the Mercers twice as hard as I am. I wish I could have met her. Me too. Lucas turned to face her fully. But Mia, you're not a replacement for her. You're not filling a void she left. You're something new, something I didn't know I needed until you showed up. She leaned across the console, kissed him softly. I love you. I'm terrified and overwhelmed and still half convinced this is all going to fall apart. But I love you. It's not going to fall apart. We're not going to let it. They went inside together, checked on Emma sleeping peacefully in her room, then stood in the hallway between their separate bedrooms, reluctant to part. Stay with me, Lucas said. Just to sleep. I just want to hold you. Mia hesitated for only a moment before nodding. They climbed into Lucas's bed, still dressed, and she curled against his chest while he wrapped his arms around her. Outside, the winter wind howled, but here, together, they were warm. Whatever happens tomorrow, Mia whispered, thank you for this. For all of it. Lucas kissed the top of her head. Tomorrow, we fight. But tonight, we rest. They fell asleep like that, holding each other, gathering strength for the battle they knew was coming. Margaret called the next morning with news. Linda Morrison, the state attorney general, would meet with them in 2 days. She'd been briefed on the basics and was interested enough to clear her schedule. They had one chance to make their case. Those 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Jessica drove back to Indianapolis to get her original accounting records. Amanda compiled more property evidence, finding 2 additional victims they hadn't known about. Jerry went through 10 years of diner finances, documenting every suspicious transaction. Mia wrote out her statement, detailing everything Ryan had done, how he destroyed her life, how the town had turned against her. Lucas watched her work, saw the toll it took to relive those memories. But she never wavered, never suggested giving up. The morning they were set to drive to the state capitol, Lucas found Mia in the bathroom, throwing up. She was pale, shaking, and when he tried to help her up, she pushed him away. I can't do this, she said. I thought I could, but I can't. Standing in front of a stranger, telling her everything, knowing it might not matter, knowing the Mercers could still win. Hey, Lucas knelt beside her. Look at me. She did, eyes red and terrified. You're the strongest person I know. You survived Ryan. You survived being homeless. You survived this whole town turning against you. You can survive this too. What if it's not enough? What if we do everything right and they still get away with it? Then at least we tried. At least we stood up and said, no, this isn't okay. You don't get to keep hurting people. Lucas took her hands. But I don't think we're going to lose. I think we're going to win. And I think 5 years from now, we're going to look back on this day as the day everything changed. Mia took a shaky breath, then another. Okay, I can do this. We can do this. Together. They made the 3-hour drive to the Capitol with Jessica and Amanda following in a separate car. Margaret met them at the Attorney General's office, looking fierce and determined in a way that made Lucas grateful she was on their side. Linda Morrison was younger than Lucas expected, maybe 45, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to their stories without interruption, examined the documents they'd brought, asked pointed questions that showed she understood exactly what they were alleging. When they finished, she sat back in her chair studying them. This is a serious accusation against one of the most prominent families in Millbrook County, she said finally. If I pursue this investigation, it's going to get ugly. The Mercers will hire expensive lawyers, they'll drag all of you through the mud, they'll use every connection they have to shut this down. We know, Lucas said. We're prepared for that. Are you? Because I need to be clear about what prepared means. Your finances will be examined, your personal lives will be scrutinized, every mistake you've ever made will be weaponized against you. And there's still a chance, even with all this evidence, that we won't be able to make charges stick. Mia spoke up, her voice steady despite her pale face. With respect, Attorney General Morrison, that's already happening. The Mercers are already destroying our lives, already using their power to hurt us. At least if we fight back, we have a chance at justice. If we do nothing, we've already lost. Morrison smiled slightly. Fair point. She looked at each of them in turn. I'm going to open an investigation. I can't promise outcomes, but I can promise I'll pursue this thoroughly and fairly. However, I need you to understand something. The moment I file the paperwork, the Mercers will know, and they will retaliate. You need to be ready for that. We're ready, Jessica said, and the others nodded. All right then. Morrison stood, shook each of their hands. Go home. Stay safe. Don't do anything that could be construed as harassment or vigilantism. Let the legal process work. I'll be in touch. They drove home in a state of exhausted relief. It wasn't victory, not yet, but it was hope. Real, tangible hope that maybe, finally, the Mercers would face consequences for what they'd done. Lucas should have known hope was dangerous. They were almost back to Millbrook when his phone rang. It was David Chen from the hardware store, his voice tight with urgency. Lucas, where are you? About 20 minutes outside town. Why? You need to get to your farm. Now. There's been a fire. Lucas's heart stopped. Emma. Where's Emma? She's fine. Margaret had her at her place, remember? But Lucas, your barn. He didn't hear the rest. Dropped the phone, pressed the accelerator to the floor. Beside him, Mia grabbed the dashboard, her face white. What happened? Fire. The barn. Lucas's hands were shaking on the wheel. Emma's safe. She's with Margaret. But the barn where he stored equipment worth $50,000 they couldn't afford to replace. The barn his grandfather had built with his own hands. The barn that held 3 generations of memories and the tools they needed to survive next season's planting. They saw the smoke before they saw the farm, a black column rising into the gray December sky. Lucas took the turn into his driveway too fast, gravel spraying, and there it was. The barn fully engulfed, flames reaching 30 feet high. The volunteer fire department's ancient truck parked helplessly in the yard while men in mismatched gear sprayed water that seemed to do nothing against the inferno. Lucas was out of the truck before it fully stopped, running toward the flames until someone caught his arm. Fire Chief Tom Brennan, covered in soot, held him back. Nothing we can do, Lucas. It's gone. We're just trying to keep it from spreading to the house. How did it start? Lucas couldn't take his eyes off the destruction. 70 years of history burning, the wood his grandfather had cut and shaped with such care turning to ash and smoke. Don't know yet. We'll investigate once it's safe. Tom's voice was carefully neutral. But Lucas, there was an accelerant. This wasn't an accident. The words hit like a physical blow. Lucas turned to stare at the fire chief. Someone did this deliberately? Can't say for sure until we do a full investigation, but yeah, this fire burned too hot, too fast to be natural. Tom paused. You have any enemies? Lucas laughed, bitter and hollow. Yeah, I do. Mia appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his. She was crying silently, tears tracking through the soot that had settled on her face. They stood together watching everything burn while the volunteer firefighters did their best, and Lucas's life went up in smoke. It took 4 hours for the fire to burn itself out. What remained was a skeleton of blackened beams and twisted metal, everything Lucas needed to run the farm reduced to wreckage. The tractor he'd just fixed. The plow his father had taught him to use. The tools, the equipment, the supplies he'd saved for months to afford. All of it gone. Margaret arrived with Emma just as the last flames were being extinguished. Lucas caught his daughter as she ran to him, held her tight while she cried into his shoulder. Daddy, why did our barn burn down? I don't know, Peanut, but we're okay. That's what matters. But all our stuff is just stuff. We still have each other. We still have the house. We're going to be okay. He said it with more confidence than he felt. The truth was, he had no idea how they'd be okay. The insurance on the barn had lapsed 2 months ago when money got tight, and he'd made the calculated risk to let it go. The equipment, the supplies, all of it was gone with no way to replace it. And planting season was 4 months away. After Emma was settled at Margaret's for the night, after the fire department left and the neighbors who'd come to gawk had gone home, Lucas and Mia stood in the ruins. The smell of smoke was overwhelming, acrid and bitter. They did this, Mia said quietly. The Mercers. This is retaliation for going to the Attorney General. We don't know that. Oh, don't we? She turned to face him, anger and guilt warring in her expression. This happened the same day we met with Morrison. The same day. That's not a coincidence, Lucas. They found out, and they struck back, and they did it by destroying everything you need to survive. Lucas wanted to argue, but he couldn't. The timing was too perfect, the message too clear. Step out of line, and we'll burn down everything you love. I'm calling the police, he said, filing a report. This is arson, and I want it investigated. The police chief plays golf with Thomas Mercer every Sunday. You think he's going to investigate his friend's family? He doesn't have a choice. There's evidence. The fire chief said there was an accelerant. That's a crime, Mia. Even the Mercers can't make that disappear. But Lucas was wrong. Chief Morrison showed up the next morning, took his statement with all the appearance of professional concern, walked through the ruins taking photographs and notes. Then he sat down across from Lucas at the kitchen table and delivered the verdict. Based on our initial investigation, it appears the fire was caused by faulty wiring in the barn's electrical system. Old building, old wiring, unfortunately not uncommon in structures of that age. Lucas stared at him. Fire Chief Brennan said there was an accelerant. Tom's a good man, but he's not a trained arson investigator. I've got 20 years of experience, and I'm telling you this was electrical. Morrison closed his notebook. No evidence of forced entry, no signs of arson, just an unfortunate accident. That's a lie. Mia spoke from the doorway, her voice hard. You're covering for them? Morrison's expression didn't change. I understand you're upset, Miss Collins, but making unfounded accusations against respected community members won't change the facts. The Mercers aren't respected. They're feared. There's a difference. I think we're done here. Morrison stood. I'm sorry about your barn, Lucas. I truly am. But sometimes accidents happen, and no amount of looking for conspiracies will change that. He left, and Lucas sat at his table feeling the last of his hope drain away. They could fight in court, could present evidence and testimony to the Attorney General, but the Mercers would fight back in ways that couldn't be prosecuted, ways that destroyed lives while staying just barely within the law. I should go, Mia said into the silence. This is my fault. If I'd never come here, if I just kept running, don't. Lucas stood, crossed to her. Don't you dare blame yourself for what they did. But they did it because of me. They burned your barn because you helped me, because you stood up for me. They burned it because they're criminals who think they're untouchable, because they've gotten away with hurting people for so long that they don't even hide it anymore. Lucas took her shoulders gently. This isn't your fault. It's theirs. And I'll be damned if I let them win. How? How do we fight this? They can destroy everything we have and call it an accident. They can make us disappear and nobody will care. Lucas didn't have an answer. For the first time since this started, he felt the full weight of what they were up against. The Mercers had power, money, connections. What did he have? A burned-out barn, a failing farm, and the love of a woman the whole town thought was a thief. The answer came from the most unlikely source. That afternoon, while Lucas was sorting through the wreckage trying to salvage anything useful, a car pulled up the drive. Expensive, new, not from around here. Lucas tensed, wondering if the Mercers were coming to gloat over their handiwork. But the woman who got out was a stranger, late 50s, dressed in a sharp business suit, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than Lucas made in a month. Mr. Hale, my name is Patricia Westwood. I'm an investigative journalist with the Indianapolis Star. I'd like to talk to you about the Mercer family. Lucas wiped soot from his hands, wary. How did you hear about us? Linda Morrison mentioned your case. Off the record, of course, but she suggested there might be a story worth telling here. Patricia looked at the burned barn. Looks like I arrived at an interesting time. If you're looking for a quote, I don't have one, and I'm not interested in making this a media circus. I'm not looking for a quote. I'm looking to expose a pattern of corruption that's been going on in Millbrook County for decades. Patricia pulled a folder from her briefcase. I've been investigating the Mercers for 2 years, Mr. Hale, following their business dealings, their political connections, rumors of harassment and fraud. But I've never been able to get victims to go on record. Everyone's too scared. Until now. Lucas took the folder, opened it. Inside were photographs, documents, news clippings going back 20 years. Evidence of the Mercer family's rise to power built on the backs of people they'd crushed along the way. Jessica Brennan contacted me yesterday, Patricia continued, said she was willing to tell her story. Amanda Foster called this morning, and your Jerry Patterson sent me his financial records. For the first time, I have people willing to speak publicly about what the Mercers have done. Why now? Lucas asked. Why not before? Because before, they were alone, isolated, easy to discredit or ignore. But together? Together, you're a pattern, a story that's harder to dismiss. Patricia gestured at the barn. And this? This is exactly the kind of overreach that brings down powerful people. They got confident, sloppy, thought they could intimidate you with arson, but now I have a crime scene to photograph, a clear retaliation, and victims willing to connect the dots. Lucas felt something stirring in his chest, not quite hope. He'd learned hope was dangerous, but something close. Determination, maybe. What do you need from us? Everything. Your story, Mia's story, permission to publish the evidence you've gathered. I want to run a front-page expose that makes it impossible for anyone to ignore what the Mercers have done. Patricia paused. But I need you to understand, this will make you public. Your face, your name, your story. The Mercers will come after you harder than ever. They already burned my barn. What else can they do? Plenty. Trust me. Patricia's expression was serious. But here's the thing. Once this story runs, they can't make it disappear. They can't threaten me the way they threaten local journalists, and the Attorney General will have public pressure to act quickly on her investigation. Mia had come out of the house, drawn by the sound of voices. Lucas looked at her, saw the question in her eyes. It's your story too, he said. Your choice. Mia looked at Patricia, at the folder of evidence, at the burned barn that represented everything the Mercers were capable of. Tell the story, she said firmly. Tell all of it. Patricia smiled. Then let's get started. They spent the next 3 days talking to Patricia, laying out everything in detail. She interviewed Jessica and Amanda and Jerry, photographed the barn ruins, dug through public records that supported their claims. And she found more victims. Women who'd been too scared to speak before, but who found courage when they realized they weren't alone. By the time Patricia left, she had enough for a 3-part series. It would run starting Sunday, she promised. Front page, full exposure, everything they'd worked for. Lucas should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt terrified. They'd committed now, declared open war on the most powerful family in the county, and he had no idea if they'd survive what came next. The Saturday before the story was set to run, Thomas Mercer himself came to the farm. Lucas was in the yard, Emma playing nearby, when the black Mercedes pulled up. He tensed, put himself between his daughter and the car, but Thomas came alone. The patriarch of the Mercer family was 72, silver-haired and distinguished, every inch the respected businessman everyone thought he was. "Emma, go inside," Lucas said quietly. "Find Mia." His daughter looked between them, sensing danger, then ran. Lucas waited until she was safely in the house before turning his full attention to Thomas. "You're trespassing. I'm trying to save you from making a terrible mistake." Thomas's voice was cultured, reasonable. "This journalist, this story you're helping her write, it's going to destroy your life, Lucas. Pretty sure you already did that when you burned my barn." "I had nothing to do with that unfortunate accident." Thomas said it with such conviction that Lucas almost believed him. Almost. "But I'm here to make you an offer, a generous one. $50,000, enough to rebuild your barn and replace your equipment. All you have to do is tell the reporter you made a mistake, that there's no story here." "You're trying to buy my silence." "I'm trying to prevent a tragedy. This crusade of yours, this vendetta against my family, it's based on lies told by a disturbed young woman who couldn't accept being fired for theft. Mia didn't steal anything. Your son framed her. My son is many things, but he's not a criminal. And these other women you found, these fantasies they're spinning, they're not fantasies, they're truth, and it's coming out whether you like it or not." Thomas's expression hardened. "You have a daughter, Lucas, a little girl who needs her father. Think about what you're risking here. Your farm, your livelihood, your reputation. Is it really worth it for a woman you barely know? I know her well enough, and I know what your family is, what Ryan is." "You know nothing." Thomas stepped closer, his voice dropping. "My son has problems. I'm not blind to that. But he's getting help. Therapy, medication, whatever he needs. This public humiliation you're planning, it won't help him. It will destroy him." For a moment, Lucas felt a flicker of something like pity. A father trying to protect his son, even a son who didn't deserve protection. But then he thought of Mia, of Jessica, of Amanda and all the others, of lives ruined while Thomas Mercer looked the other way. "Your son needs to face consequences for what he's done. And so do you, for enabling him all these years." "Then you've made your choice." Thomas's voice went cold. "Don't say I didn't warn you, Lucas. When this is over, when you've lost everything, remember that you had a chance to walk away." He left, and Lucas stood in his yard watching the Mercedes disappear down the drive, wondering if he'd just signed his own death warrant. The story ran that Sunday. Lucas bought 5 copies of the Indianapolis Star from the gas station in town, spread them across his kitchen table, and stared at the headline: "Power, Privilege, and Predation: How One Family Controlled a Town Through Fear." Patricia had done her job well. The article laid out everything: Ryan's pattern of harassment, the fabricated theft charges, the property fraud, the town's complicity. She'd interviewed 9 women, including Mia. She'd obtained financial records, legal documents, testimony from Jerry and others who'd watched the Mercers operate with impunity for years. And she'd published Lucas's name, his photo, his story, made him the face of resistance against corruption. His phone started ringing before he finished reading the first paragraph. Friends he hadn't heard from in years, reporters wanting follow-up interviews, strangers calling to offer support or threats in equal measure. He turned it off after the 10th call, sat in the sudden silence, and waited. The response came faster than expected. By Monday afternoon, the state attorney general's office announced a formal criminal investigation into the Mercer family's business practices. By Tuesday, 2 more women had come forward with their own stories of harassment and retaliation. By Wednesday, Ryan Mercer had been placed on administrative leave from the family business, and rumors were flying that federal investigators were looking into tax fraud. The town's response was mixed. Some people who'd crossed the street to avoid Lucas for weeks suddenly wanted to shake his hand, tell him they'd always suspected something was wrong with the Mercers. Others accused him of destroying the town's reputation, of biting the hand that fed Millbrook's economy. Lucas didn't care about either reaction. He cared about keeping his family safe while the legal process ground forward. The breakthrough came in February, 3 months after Patricia's story ran. Amanda, using her access to county records, found something the investigators had missed. A property deed signed by Ryan Mercer for one of the apartments he'd claimed was stolen from. But the signature was dated 2 days before the alleged theft, proving he'd acquired the property before the woman was even accused of wrongdoing. It was the smoking gun they needed. Proof of premeditation, of a deliberate scheme to defraud. The Attorney General moved quickly, and on a cold morning in late February, Ryan Mercer was arrested on charges of fraud, harassment, and conspiracy. Thomas Mercer hired the best lawyers money could buy. But there were too many victims now, too much evidence, too much public attention. In May, Ryan accepted a plea deal. 5 years in prison, restitution to his victims, and a lifetime ban from working in property management or financial services. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough for the lives he'd ruined, but it was something. Thomas Mercer died of a heart attack 3 months later. Some said it was the stress of watching his empire crumble. Others said it was karma. Lucas thought it was just a man who'd lived long enough to see consequences finally catch up with him. The Mercer business empire was broken up and sold. Jerry Patterson bought his diner building outright. Amanda and her husband bought the property management company, turned it into an honest business. The rental properties went to various buyers, many of them people the Mercers had forced out years before. And slowly, painfully, Millbrook began to heal. For Lucas, the healing took a different form. The insurance company, facing public pressure after Patricia's article mentioned the suspicious barn fire, reversed their denial and paid out his claim. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to rebuild. Friends and neighbors who'd been too scared to help before showed up with tools and labor. Margaret organized fundraisers. Within 6 months, Lucas had a new barn, new equipment, and a farm that was actually starting to turn a profit. But the real changes were quieter, more personal. One evening in late summer, Lucas found Mia in the garden, surrounded by tomato plants heavy with fruit. She'd taken to gardening with the same intensity she brought to everything, and the results were spectacular. Vegetables they could never eat fast enough, flowers that turned the farmhouse into something from a magazine. "I've been thinking," she said without looking up from the weeds she was pulling, "about starting a business." "Yeah? What kind?" "Baking. Remember Thanksgiving? How much I loved cooking, creating something from scratch?" Mia sat back on her heels, wiped dirt from her hands. "I thought maybe a small stand by the road. Sell bread, pies, cookies. Start small, see if it works." Lucas smiled. "I think that's a great idea." "You do?" "Yeah. You're an incredible baker, and this farm could use some diversification." He paused. "Plus, I like the idea of you doing something for yourself, something that makes you happy." Mia stood, crossed to him. Over the past months, they'd grown even closer, their relationship deepening from desperate attraction into something solid and real. They still hadn't talked about the future in concrete terms, both of them gun-shy about making promises when the world felt so uncertain. "I am happy," she said softly. "For the first time in years, maybe ever, I'm actually happy." "Me too." They stood in the garden as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and Lucas thought about how far they'd come. From that October afternoon when a desperate woman appeared at his gate to this moment, standing together in a garden they'd planted with their own hands. Emma's voice called from the house. "Daddy! Mia! Dinner!" They walked back together, hand in hand, and Lucas realized this was what home felt like. Not the house or the land, but these people, this life they'd built from ruins and determination. That night, after Emma was asleep, Lucas found Mia on the porch, their spot, where they'd first admitted their feelings, where they'd planned their fight against the Mercers, where all the important conversations seemed to happen. He'd been carrying the ring in his pocket for a week, waiting for the right moment. He learned with Sarah that there was no such thing as a perfect moment. There was only now and the courage to reach for what you wanted. "Mia Collins," he said, pulling out the simple silver band. Not expensive, He couldn't afford expensive, but chosen with care. I know we did everything backwards, fell in love during a war, built a life in the middle of chaos, but I wouldn't change any of it, because it brought me you. Mia's hand went to her mouth, eyes wide. I'm not asking you to forget what happened, not asking you to pretend the hard parts didn't exist. I'm asking you to build a future with me anyway, to take everything we survived and use it to make something beautiful. Lucas took her hand. Marry me. Not because you need me or I need you, but because we choose each other, every day, for the rest of our lives. She was crying now, nodding before she could form words. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, pulled her close, and kissed her while the stars came out overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a barn owl called. The corn rustled in the evening breeze. The farm breathed around them, alive and thriving. They were married in September, a small ceremony in Margaret's garden with Emma as flower girl and everyone who'd fought beside them in attendance. Jessica and Amanda were there, along with Jerry and Patricia and a dozen others who'd found courage in each other's company. Mia's baking stand opened that fall, a cheerful little structure Lucas built by the road with Emma's help. Within weeks, people were driving from towns over to buy her bread and pies. Within months, she was making more profit than the farm's corn harvest. Within a year, she'd hired 2 employees and was looking at opening a storefront in town. And in March, a year and a half after she'd first appeared at Lucas's gate, Mia told him she was pregnant. Emma was ecstatic. Spent months planning how she'd teach her baby brother or sister everything important, how to feed chickens, how to avoid Hank the rooster, how to find the best stars from the porch. Lucas was terrified and thrilled in equal measure, remembering Sarah's pregnancy with Emma, trying not to let fear overshadow joy. But Mia was healthy and strong, and when their son was born in November, a year that had started with fire and ended with new life, Lucas held him and cried and understood finally what it meant to heal. They named him Thomas, after Lucas's father, not after Thomas Mercer. They didn't speak that name anymore. The Mercers had taken enough. They wouldn't take this too. 5 years after Mia first knocked on Lucas's door, the farm was thriving. Mia's bakery had 2 locations and employed 15 people. Emma was 11, growing like a weed, still bossy and brilliant, and the best big sister Thomas could have asked for. And Lucas and Mia had weathered enough storms together that they'd stopped worrying about when the next one would come. On a warm evening in October, Lucas stood on the porch watching his wife teach their son how to identify constellations while Emma practiced gymnastics in the yard. The barn, rebuilt, sturdy, full of equipment and hope, stood solid against the darkening sky. Mia looked over, caught him watching, smiled the smile that still made his heart kick against his ribs. "What are you thinking about?" she called. "How lucky I am." "We're both lucky." "Yeah," Lucas said, walking down to join his family. "We really are." She'd come with nothing left, desperate, hurt, certain the world had no place for her anymore. And he'd been drowning in grief and silence, going through motions instead of living. Together they'd built everything, a family, a business, a life worth fighting for. And sometimes late at night when the house was quiet and the farm slept around them, they'd talk about that October afternoon when a stranger appeared at a gate and changed everything, about how close they'd come to missing each other, about how much courage it took to choose hope when the world insisted on despair. But mostly, they didn't talk about the past at all. They were too busy living the future they'd fought so hard